brain research tells us that it's not till 7 or 8 for boys because they need that tactile and that touch and doing the things and getting out and doing it. And that's why a lot of boys are put on or, stimulants like Ritalin and Adderall and things like that because their bodies are still developing and the brain research tells you that. And a lot of the females were able to stay compartmentalized and be able to do well in class. And so if you look at the amount of kids who were diagnosed with ADD or ADHD through the 2000s and 10s, it was more boys. It was almost 3 to 1. Boy to girl in the ratio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brighter Together podcast. My name is Janet Courtney, and my guest today is Rob Gregor. Rob is the superintendent of schools at Yuba County Office of Education, and that is in Marysville, California, which is where the office is, but I'm sure there's lots of different locations. So welcome, Rob. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be a part.
So tell everybody a little bit about what you do and about what goes on at Yuba County Office of Education.
Well, they have a saying at County Office of Ed, if you visit one county office of ed, you visited one county office of education.
Absolutely.
The reason for that is because we all do something different and diverse, and what goes on at one county doesn't happen at the other. We have a lot of autonomy, and we're able to find the areas that we feel are most important to us, and we work in those areas. So in Yuba County, some of the areas that we are still working on is we do the mod severe. We have basically a level 2 school called Virginia School, where we kids from fragile medical health to autism, different things like that work at there. And we do not do the ED program; those are done at our local districts.
Okay.
Within our county, we have 5 districts. We have Wheatland Elementary, Plumas Lake Elementary, Wheatland High School, Camptonville Elementary, and Marysville Joint Unified School District. The largest of that being Marysville Joint Unified School District, which is almost 11,000 students with 24 schools.
Wow. That's a big district. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a big responsibility that you're doing.
So 15,000 kids overall. And then we also work with the Yuba College here, which is another 9,000 kids.
Wow. Okay,
Yes.
So what do you do for the college? I'm not familiar with
We
that.
are the overseer for their voting and the things of that nature. So we work with them we have a middle college out there. We do dual enrollment. We have multiple certifications through our CTE programs that we do. So we work hand in hand with the college and helping promote for not only high schoolers, but adults. So adult education and providing certifications, qualifications that they need, whether it be nursing, it could be welding, auto body, different kinds of techs areas that we work with them.
So career paths, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. What we used to call ROP, we call CTE now, Career Technical Education.
Yeah.
And so we are a provider of that here in Yuba County also. And we have our own CTE building, and that's where we do classes from medical aids, nursing aids, hydroponics. We do construction. We're looking at Class A driver's license. We do certifications for like flaggers, also for doing your forklift certification, welding certification, auto body certification, working towards maybe even adding, some of the culinary food certifications and things like that for our community.
Well, just let me know when they're cooking and I'll be there.
Me too. I turn the meal down.
That's fantastic. I appreciate you clarifying that because I know a lot of our listeners are educators, but some of them aren't. And we can get really alphabet soupy sometimes.
Absolutely. I know everything we call IIP, IEP, elemental P, QRS. Z, all of that. And it does, what I've learned is the more letters that you put in front of the name, the more we think we talk with, education-ese. So,
right. Yeah, for
trying
sure.
to make sure keep it simple is what I try to do.
Yeah. Like the KISS principle, right?
Yes. Well, I think my upbringing, 32 years in education, I started, working at a high school, worked in elementaries. I've been a principal of a middle school or a high school and a K-12. I've done multiple areas, charters. And then ultimately my last 2 years as a county superintendent.
Congratulations. That's fantastic. Yeah. And that's the point, right? We want to be here and talk about your challenges, but also your wins. That's the thing that I think that education takes a beating in the national stage. And so we're trying to do everything from our little corner of the world to say, you know what? there is a lot of people doing a lot of really amazing things. So tell us some of the things that are going on. I know you've talked about the career stuff, but what other kinds of things what are your challenges and how are you getting through those? How are you working through those?
I think the biggest challenge, and I think everybody in education is dealing with, is the aftermath of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the social emotional,
Yep.
we call it SEL,
Yep.
social emotional learning, what it's done on the mental health, not only of the students, but teachers and parents
Mm-hmm.
and the staffs and how to cope with that. Since COVID, a lot of areas have popped up, high anxiety rates, a lot of people with family emotional health issues, to just basically not wanting to come to school anymore because they don't feel like they fit in.
Yeah.
And we work very strongly and very closely with that at our schools. We put in wellness centers. We've been adding social emotional counselors, different wellness coaches to be able to try to help students help themselves, because how do you how do you work with anxiety? It's like a diagnosis that people put out there, but it's an inside of
Mm-hmm.
an emotion that's happening, and it's real, and it's something that people deal with every day, that they literally struggle to get in a car or to get out of the car to go to the school or to get up to go to work. And you can't just say, "Oh, just get over it."
Just get over it, right? Yeah. How
Yeah,
many
but
times have we heard
that's
that?
kind of
Yeah.
the old term that we would do. I mean, think about, I have a son that went through the Iraq War and things like that, and they use now the term PTSD, post stress, disorder, and that didn't exist after World War II or Korean War. They
Right.
just told them get over it,
Yeah.
move on.
Yeah.
And so today we do know that there's diagnosis of the mental health, and we're struggling with that, and we're trying to cope with kids who are frankly told to stay home, to hide, and it was okay to not interact.
Right.
And so you're dealing with a whole group of adults that, 4 years ago, those 17 and 18-year-olds, will do the math. They're 21 and 22 years olds now, and they're struggling to keep into education or to their careers. And then you have those kids who are 2 and 3 that are now elementary age kindergartners, and they're struggling to interact in the classroom.
Right.
And we have kids now that literally are throwing things. They're a lot higher rate of anxiety and stress that are going on. And the old saying we used to have, it's like herding cats. Now it's really like building an airplane in the air for a lot of the teachers in kindergarten. And they don't know what to do because they don't have the tools in their tool belt. They know how to teach, but
Mm-hmm.
how to help somebody emotionally when something is interacting with their emotions and the child doesn't know how to talk about them.
Right.
And you're talking 4 and 5-year-olds to articulate that. We still struggle with adults, being able to say, well, I don't feel good. Well, what do you
Right.
mean by feel good? Well, I just don't feel right. Well, what do and you got to get to the point, like, you know what? I'm fearful. I don't know what to do. I have chest pains when it gives me anxiety to even show up to work or to my place of business or school or whatever it is. And I don't think a lot of our students are capable of talking about it, but we're breaking those barriers down, and we're seeing that the more we're able to discuss it, the more success we're having. The problem is there's still a lot of kids that are self-diagnosing, and then they're also using, drugs or alcohol or other things to be able to help cope. And so we're in an area, being California, that they do a lot of self-diagnosing. It does happen through the internet and things like that. And so people add things that are not there, or they start adding different drugs or things to try to cure it based on what they've watched or seen on, TikTok or other areas. And so what we're trying to do is get to the actual facts and then help people relieve those so that they can have success again in school.
And isn't that just I mean, it's such a product of where we're at with technology and with, and you always find the thing that's the worst, right? It's
It's
like,
true, right? We're
yeah.
human beings. I mean, I think we're 9 times more apt to find what's wrong with us than what's right.
Mm. Ooh, that's a terrible statistic. I mean, it's
Well,
true, but
it's
yeah.
true, but think about that. I mean,
Yeah.
so when you see something that's on the internet and it says, you're dying and you're going to not make it, that's what you think is going to happen. So therefore, emotionally, the same thing. Like, well, I must have the worst case because blah, blah,
Right.
blah.
Right. Because I have
And
all of these things. Yeah.
I have all these symptoms, right? Or
Mm.
I have these feelings or these emotions, and being able to talk about them. And, depending on your culture you come from too,
Hmm.
we have different cultures, that they, they, they say, do not discuss this, do not
Right.
go anywhere, and do not talk to the government or talk to your teacher and tell them, because they'll come in and take you away from
Right.
us.
The fear.
And there's that type of fear that's not
Yeah.
real, but it's something that it does play into that emotion.
Yeah. And
So
it's
then you have
so,
other families like, give me everything you can.
yeah. One end of the spectrum all the way to the other end, right? It's like,
Correct.
give
And
me everything,
you
help
have your
me.
extreme givers and your extreme takers,
Yeah.
and we're trying to find that balance too.
Yeah, and that's it's a balancing act. It really is. It's a tightrope that you walk. It's a struggle, it's like you just and sometimes you talk about teaching to the middle, but you can't really teach to the middle because you got so many other things happening and
Yeah.
they have to be there, just to even be able to get them ready to learn.
That's
And
not, some of us
yeah,
that came through the 90s and stuff with Nancy Atwell, that was what it was, teach to the middle, and
yeah.
doing that, but it's not really true. There's so much onto the outskirts that, are now intertwined within who the person is. And like I said, I think it came to forefront during COVID,
Yeah.
because what happened is you had people staying home all the time and trying to teach as we're talking right now through, internet and through, some type of a device where people before had face-to-face interaction.
Yeah.
And there is something to be able to read with empathy and emotion and feelings when you actually are face to face with something, and you can better read their body language and
Mhm.
you can understand what's going on. And I know through my years of teaching, I knew that certain people, like if you put your hand on the touch, it was a stress release
Mhm.
and they take a breath.
Right.
Where other people, it was a tense
Yeah.
and they got emotion. They're like, ooh, so you had to know, but you got that based on the interaction you had with them. And some people, if I was going to call on them, I would actually look at them, say, hey, in a minute, I got a question for you. And then I would come back so that they would even process. And then I would say, hey, have you thought about this? And then let them have a little time. And then I'd go back and talk to somebody else about it. And then they would be able to discuss it. Where if I just said, hey, Johnny, tell me what are you feeling right now? It didn't happen.
Yeah.
It tensed up and stopped.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
someone else was able to just blurb it all out. And they had, as we used to call it, diarrhea of the mouth, where they could just like,
Mhm.
they could say
Yeah.
anything and all, it was easy.
And there's so many different ways that we learn. I mean, I think that's something in the last, 20 years or so, we've really figured out that, neurodivergence and all of those buzzwords, but it's just,
Well, brain research tells us
yeah,
so much now. I mean, even think about what we're talking about, just between the difference between being a boy and a girl and the mental aspects of when they're ready to start school. I mean, brain research tells us that it's not till 7 or 8 for boys, because they need that tactile and that touch and doing the things and getting out and doing it. And that's why a lot of boys are put on, or, stimulants like Ritalin and Adderall and things like that, because their bodies are still developing and the brain research tells you that. And where, a lot of the females were able to stay compartmentalize and be able to do well in class. And so if you look at the amount of kids who were diagnosed with ADD or ADHD through the 2000s and 10s, it was more boys. It was almost 3 to 1 boy to girl in the ratio. But it's also that brain research tells you why.
yeah,
Hunter gatherer, how we were created. They're
yeah,
outgoing and doing, compared to, to provider and food and making and things like that. It's just how, you can go back to, the very basis of human nature and what we were doing, and your body's still going to react through those areas, and your brain is.
right. Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. And just and those educators that have figured that out and are working with those kids and helping them to find that path is there's heroes out there that are doing that work. And it sounds like that you've got quite a few of them in your
It's
area.
great. And when
So
you see it happening and you watch the children, I call it detoxing, where they literally are able to take breaths. We use conscious discipline. And it's basically when the brain is tight and everything's in that red brain, being able to release and open up. And they breathe, and then they be able to just go, okay, getting back to that, green and blue brain where you're
hmm
literally going, and then they can be able to interact. But that red brain's flight or
yeah,
fight.
fight or flight.
And so
Yeah.
you're going to get one of the two out of the kids. And then, some people, they go inward and someone gets outward with their emotion, but you
hmm
watch out, and that's where a lot of our teachers don't have those skill sets anymore. But now through like conscious discipline, others, we give them the chance for that. Oops, it's
hmm
okay to make a mistake. Go ahead,
Yeah.
allow yourself to say, I didn't know any better.
hmm And that's the thing too, is like no child is specifically just trying to be bad.
Yeah.
kids are not bad. They don't want to
No,
be bad. They just don't know how to deal. And the fact that
they're
you're
not
helping
taught.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Who taught you how to interact?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of things I was taught was as a boy was like, well, boys don't cry.
Hmm.
Boys, certain things that you would say, and those little sayings, you're like, okay, well, I'm not allowed to cry. Well, no, yes, you are, and not to show the emotion and things like that. So what happens is you stuff and you do different things like that based on how you were taught or things that were said to you, which weren't true, but they were things that just by nature they were taught to your parent and their parent taught to you and you're teaching to your kid.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's interesting how the more, I'm on my six kids now. I have six, and from my 37-year-old now to my 10-year-old, there's a huge difference in my parenting
Oh, for
skills.
sure. Yeah.
Well, but it's experiential, number one, but two, my understanding of how the brain works and the things that you're doing compared to what I was doing, 37 years ago to compared to what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
It's just totally different, and my mindset's different. And then, the older kids are like, "You're a different dad." Well, yeah, I am, because I'm
Yeah.
not the same person. But the same thing in education. If we kept doing everything the same way for years, I mean, that's madness. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
That's the
Right?
definition of insanity.
Right. But yet we do, and we put everybody in the rows. We put everybody by alphabet or boy, girl, and lines, and
Hmm.
it's how long has school been doing that for over 100 years?
Right. Yeah.
And
And
then, and
society's
go,
not
and we've gone
there.
through the industrial age and other things, and yet we're still using some of those archaic methods.
Hmm.
And so, again, you can see where those batted up. And I think what happens that exploded or imploded technically
Yeah.
during COVID. And
Yeah.
then people came out of those like, I don't even have to go to school. I could go do it on the line if I wanted. And
Hmm.
we still have people doing that for college and their degrees
Yeah.
and some high schooling.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
There's it's technology is not going to go away. You and I
Well,
both know tech. It's just
well,
how
yeah.
you manage the technology and how you manage online and how you manage your interactions day to day. That's what makes a student well-rounded, right? It's
Yeah.
not
Well,
there
think
isn't
about,
one
I mean, you can
black
do
and
your
one
speech
white,
now
right?
online now for your speech. You can do your OT. I mean,
Yep.
a lot of things. I mean, speech therapists, they're like a unicorn to find anymore because
That's
they're
what
like,
we
hey,
do.
I can work from home. Why would I have to show up?
Yep,
Right?
I have been working from home since 2011, and I'll tell you, it is different. It is very different. Yeah. And
But again, you got some areas of poverty, or in my area, I have up in the hills where they don't have good internet and access to it.
yeah,
So, you also have the disadvantage because of that,
yeah,
and where they don't have the internet access, daily, and it's spotty at best. And we still have areas like that in our higher elevation, because I have remote rural areas, up in the very tops of, our county, and they don't have access to that.
yeah.
I still have families that have no water and electricity,
Wow.
and they choose to.
Yeah,
But
it's a
they're,
choice. Yeah, at that point it
but
is a
they,
choice.
but
Yeah.
they, again, they're living that way. And how do you give them speech therapy?
Right.
How do you give them OT therapy? And, and they're not willing to come into the site or the school district to do it. They're doing independent study or, charters or, that kind of thing where they're trying to, basically say, hey, I don't want to be a part of that system.
Yeah.
But you still need to provide the, helps and those services. That's part of what we have to do as a county.
Yeah, and it's a catch-22 because, you're trying to do what you need to do legally, and yet you still have people that, yeah. And it'll be interesting too to see what happens with, and it's interesting that we're talking about this because my husband just installed Starlink at our house. I'm not
Yes.
plugging Starlink. I mean, it is satellite. We had an issue a couple of weeks ago where because I run my business out of my house, I have to have an internet and I have to have a backup and I have to have power and I have to have a backup. And the power we had, and it was fabulous because, we were able to do everything and that power was out for almost 24 hours. But the internet that we had chosen as our backup actually went down as well. So we didn't even have that. And we were in the middle of billing and payroll. And it was like, oh my gosh. It was like, okay, well, my husband and I were like, what do we do now? It's like, and it was like, oh, Starlink, because, it's not dependent on, whether
Right.
T-Mobile's working or whether the broadband's working or whatever. So my husband's our CTO. We're a family business, but he has been crawling up and had a lift to get on the top of the house today to get that all set up. But, that's a choice. Again, it goes back to choices, right?
Yes.
So
I get it. I mean, we Starlink at our cabin and it's at 6,000 feet elevation, but for years we had no services. If
nothing.
we did, it
Yeah.
was spotty.
Nothing. Yeah.
And then it would last only certain times. And then you would max out on your amount of usage. And then it would just shut off and it would just go down to like, the old dial up. It almost
Right.
was like, you're like, what is going on?
Yeah.
But now with Starlink, you're right. You have that ability to be able to be accessed 24/7 almost,
Yeah.
without I mean, the only thing we had struggles was when it snowed,
Hmm.
but then we just had to go up and clean off the face of the dish. But other than that, it's crazy what
Yeah.
you can do now.
Yeah, and it's been so fast. I'm probably I've been a therapist for 31 years, so you and I are probably pretty close to the same age. And I look back, I graduated with my master's in 94, and I remember us talking about, wow, there's this thing called the internet. And how cool is that going to be when we can have, and you look on and you dial up and there's
Yep.
nothing there for speech therapy. Oh, that's not gonna go anywhere. Huh. So, you know,
I
hindsight's
remember going
2020,
through those
isn't it?
processes. I graduated college in 92 and just,
Yeah, yeah.
and then being able to go through those times and watching the differences of how things have changed, in my career
Mhm.
and even in education. I was started with a chalkboard, back in Missouri, and it's where I started. And, I made $18,000 a year at
Wow.
my first job, and you tell people somebody like now, and they're like, you're crazy. And I mean, we've come such a long way. I mean, we did not have the internet as we have
Mm-mm,
today. There was no email when I started, you know,
mm-mm. No
people are like,
cell
what?
phones. No cell
No,
phones.
no pagers, but that was it when I first got into education, but no cell phones. I
Nope.
mean, a lot of different things that have changed. I mean, there wasn't even a phone in my classroom,
Yeah.
to be able to get a hold of somebody. I remember when Channel One started showing up in our classrooms, and then we, were able to get phones in our room, and then there was one more distraction for somebody calling you out of their office, and instead of having the intercoms, because I
Hmm.
was used to the intercoms where they'd call you just directly to your room to have a student removed.
Right.
I mean, now today you can get a text message. You don't even get disrupted.
Yeah.
And it's just,
Yeah.
it's changed by leaps and bounds. And like I said, since COVID, it whether you like it or not, Pandora's box is open
Yep.
for what goes on through the internet and through with education. It will never ever be the same.
No.
And now you add AI to that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've had a couple of guests on that have talked about AI, and it is a tool. And I think that's the piece that we just really have to hold on to. These are tools. We need tools that are good and can be not good. So
Right.
it's like anything else. It's a balancing act. You
Didn't
have
we
to,
hear that with the internet? It
yeah,
was going to destroy everything.
yeah, exactly.
I,
Right.
I
And
seriously,
then,
I remember that as
yeah,
a teacher when it first came out. They're like, no one will ever, you don't have to ever use it anything again. Like you really don't. I don't go to a library anymore
yeah,
to be able to do my research,
yeah,
like I used to do, and I actually pull out an index card.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the library system certainly has had to evolve as well because of it.
Right.
And
And so I think
yeah.
with AI, we'll have some of those same
Oh
evolved,
yeah.
changes and things like that. I mean, it's constantly learning daily. Actually, it's by milliseconds,
Yeah.
it's growing. And so, what we think about even today is not what we're going to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's
Let's
that's
listen to this
crazy.
podcast in 10 years and go, oh, wow, we had no idea.
Thank you.
Right.
If you could like take me back 30 years ago and I tell you what education was today, I'd be totally wrong.
Yeah. Oh, I never thought I would. I mean, to be a therapist and to work from home for the last 15, 14 years, I didn't think that
No,
was something
it's
I could
unheard of.
do.
I mean,
So,
and
yeah.
to think that you would
Yeah.
actually be teaching from a desktop or from a computer.
Yeah.
I mean, we watched the Jetsons as a kid
Yeah.
and we would
Yeah,
see what
we
happened.
did.
And we thought that was crazy.
And yet it is our reality today.
Well, seriously, I sit there and looking, when they did the Brady Bunch, how did they come up with a Zoom meeting before it even at the beginning of it? It's like, how did they know that we were going to do Zoom? I mean,
Right.
they're
Yeah.
sitting there looking up and down at each other. That's exactly what we were
That's
doing
what we
during
do.
Zoom meetings.
So true. Oh my
But
goodness.
seriously, right? But
Yeah.
I would say that's
Yeah.
a stretch, but still,
It's still,
I mean,
but it's still the truth. I mean, it
well,
still
it is.
is. And it just keeps, and I think that we as human beings have to make sure that we keep, and I'll tell you something at Lighthouse, what we do is we just always remember that these are human beings, that
Amen.
our,
Well,
our mission is, as a company, our mission is to be a therapy company run by therapists for the betterment of students. We have to focus, and what you're doing, you focus on the kids. You focus
yeah,
on
well, I always
helping
say
them.
God put me in this position to help others, and
Yes,
that's what I look at as
you
I'm in a
got it.
great is I get to touch the life every day. And so
Praise God. Yep.
how awesome is that? Every day I get to see somebody and be a part of something. And ultimately, I may not interact with kids every day, but like today I did. I got to go onto multiple sites and go visit a lot of our special ed sites today. And we were honoring our classified as it's classified appreciation time. But
What is that?
man,
Tell me what that is real quick.
classified appreciation?
Yeah. What is that? Yeah. I don't know that.
So that's for our it's non-certificate, non-teachers. Teachers was last week.
Okay.
So we
Yeah.
all the
Okay.
support staff. Yeah, so all the support staff, we went around
Gotcha.
and gave them a little, just attaboy, attagirl, thank you, and we appreciate you, and that from coming from all of my cabinet and from the assistant soups and deputy soups and directors and
Nice.
things like that, and how much we appreciate them.
Yeah. They're critical. They're a critical piece.
Everybody
Yeah.
is, right? And
Everybody is. Yeah.
ultimately, they're serving the most critical, which is the students. And
Right.
that's why I said I, I don't tell people I have to. I get to serve them,
Right.
and I choose to do that. And that's where I feel like God's given me that opportunity to be the voice for those who may be voiceless or that they need a little bit louder of a microphone to talk into. And we
Right.
can be that and give them the opportunities. In this area, I'm always saying I want to create more givers than takers. And we, as a society, if we have more givers, they're going to be able to empty their cup to be able to fill themselves back up so that they can constantly grow. Because the best thing you can do is give of yourself
Yes.
because we're here to serve others.
Right.
Ultimately, we're on this earth to help others. And if we're
1000%.
doing that and we're pushing that out, then it changes our world around us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's compound interest in its best form is in people and investing in them.
Yeah. Dave Ramsey had this, and I've always held on to it, is, he talks about having an open palm, where the money goes in and the money goes out. When you do this, you're going to hold on to what you got, but nothing else can come in. And so and it's the same concept, of like, if you can be a giver of yourself and a receiver, there's an openness to that. And that is so cool because, it just is servant leadership. You're talking about, it's just beautiful. And it is
Well, think
totally
of
who
it
we
like
are.
sand. I mean, as your own children, as like sand, the harder that you squeeze, the more sand goes out.
Yeah.
But the more that you hold there, it stays and it able to, to nurture and to use it for what you want. But
Right.
the harder you squeeze, the more the sand goes away and you have nothing in the
Nothing at
end.
the end. Right.
And so
Exactly.
that's what I always remind myself, just hold it out and then, let God do the work, but we just provide the opportunities and then they
Hmm.
can be able to find out what their values are. Because I say everybody will have a career, but not everybody will go to college.
Right.
And so I'm always looking for what's your career? What do you want to do? Who are you going to be? What excites you? And then when you find that, you find their joy, find that love for something or their passion. And then when they do that, then they'll go to college because they got to get the certifications.
Right.
They say, you know what? I need an AA degree or I need this classified, credential or I need these things. And then before you know it, they got a master's degree or even a doctorate because the ceiling kept hitting a certain point and they're like, I want to get paid a little more. If I
Yeah.
did just little
Yeah.
things. And then next thing you know, I mean, I'm a prime example of that. I mean, through education system, I mean, you start at the bottom at 18,000, but go back, they're like, hey, you get this many units, you get paid this amount. You get this many,
Hmm.
you get paid this amount. And then get your master's, you can do that. And you can go into you becoming the leader. And I was always a person that was told, if you're complaining about your leader and you're doing nothing about it, you're the problem.
You are the problem. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I always look at it, okay, then I will go and put myself in that position.
Yeah.
And so that's why I've always moved through up those things. It's not because of just like, oh, I think I was going to be a great superintendent. It was more like, no, I felt like we could bring change. And if I could do it, anybody could do it.
Yeah. 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 I certainly never thought I'd start a business at 50, but here I am 7 years later, 57, and we're, 2,500 kids. You just keep doing it. You just keep loving
Yeah.
on the
And
people.
same here,
Yeah.
same age. And I'm looking at like, how in the world did I get to this at
Yeah.
this point?
Right.
And, to be over, 15,000 kids, who knew?
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, I could talk to you all day, but I know we've been going for a while, and I have one last question. And you cannot say money because everybody needs money. But if you could miraculously solve one challenge in your schools, what would you want to solve?
I would say instead of money, the value and their
Mm.
worth, and being able to change how people see themselves. Because
Hmm.
I see everybody has value
Yeah.
or worth. And if they could be able to see what I see or what others see in them, then they would be able to know that they are valuable and they're worthy of what is out there for them. And then
Yeah.
they could fight for that and do whatever it takes to get that value.
Yeah.
Because one person, if they see your value and you can attain to that, then you would sell whatever you have to get to what it takes to have those riches, as some people call it. But it's riches is who you are and what it comes, and that's where your value comes through that, and ultimately
Fantastic.
your worth.
Fantastic. Fantastic answer. Thank you, Rob. Okay.
Yeah.
So Great conversation. Knew it would be. Love it. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about Rob and about Yuba County Office of Education?
Yeah, they can go to our webpage at Yuba County Office of Education, and we have all of it there on our website. And you can find out what jobs we have available. We're looking for paraeducators. We're looking for moderate, severe teachers, looking for people, CTE teachers. I have charter schools for kids who are expelled. I have schools for, kids that are incarcerated. Every part of it, you can think of kids that have been SARBed, which is School Accountability Review Board, where they literally maybe going 10% of the year, 20%, and finding a way to start getting them back in school. We have all of those opportunities to be able to do that, and we have the resources to be able to help those. And then we can also, for the adults who are looking for a career and not sure what they want to do, we can do that through our career technical education. And so we have all of those resources available. It's just be able to go that. We run a one-stop here to be able to help people in our area. And what it is it's one place to go to be able to find a job. And they can come in here and be able to take some testing, and then we can help them even get into, construction trades, you name it, lots of different positions.
Great. That is really great. Thank you again for being here, Rob, and thank you for what you're doing. It's evident that you have real true passion, and people's lives are going to be changed by what you're doing for sure.
Amen. Well, I feel blessed to be able to serve others.
Yeah.
So that ultimately, that's why I even took the time to do this, and just to tell about the great things that we're doing, but ultimately to make Yuba County the best, because I have a saying, Yuba can.
Yeah.
And if we do it together, we can make it happen. And it's through partnerships and people getting the word and spreading it of all the great things that are happening.
Well, thanks. Thanks again for being on Brighter Together podcast, because truly we are brighter together.
Yeah. And our saying is better together.
There
That's
you
our
go.
church.
There you
So
go. Thanks.